Welcome to this episode of the Fire Away Q&A. And today's question comes to us from Gabe. And Gabe says, Corey, about how many calls do you go through in a season? As I am still in the learning process, I've noticed that calls I've been practicing with throughout the off season are usually stretched out and shot by the time season gets here. I carry them in my truck and practice as much as I can every time I am driving. What are your thoughts? Are there things I should be doing to make them last longer? And that's a great question, and one that I'm actually prepared to answer today. I took 2 diaphragm elk calls last fall after elk season, and I put them on the dash of my truck. And I've left them there for the past 3 to 4 months, just exposed to sunlight, to heat, to cold, to everything, to show how the latex actually deteriorates. So when we talk about a new diaphragm elk call, the latex is the most important part of that, and that's what makes the sound. And the longer you can preserve that latex, the longer that call is going to last. So a couple things I want to talk about. First, there are 3 things that absolutely destroy latex, and that's heat, moisture, and exposure to sunlight. So having a call case, something like this, that you're able to put the diaphragm call in and close up, it keeps all the sunlight out. It has holes in the bottom, so it's vented so the call can dry out without keeping that moisture in there. It's going to cause that latex to break apart and fall apart. And then also keeping this in a place that's not going to get hot. So don't keep calls in the truck in the summer. Don't leave them laying outside. Make sure they're in a place where they're not going to get too hot, where they're not going to be exposed to sunlight, and where they're going to be able to dry off after use. Some people go as far as to rinse them off with distilled water after they're done using them. The acid from your saliva, a lot of times if that stays on there and isn't allowed to dry out and ventilate, that can cause some issues. So a lot of people will rinse them off with water, dry them off really good, either air dry or even pat dry them with a paper towel, put them in a Ziploc, put them in the refrigerator, and they'll last quite a while that way. For me, I found that just getting a ventilated case, putting them in there, I can store 6 or 7 diaphragms in here, put them in a closet where out of the sunlight, where the temperature is regulated, and they're going to last a long time. The problem is if you put these diaphragms on the dash of your truck, they are going to be exposed to sunlight daily. They're going to be exposed to heat, especially during the spring, summer, and fall, and they're just it's not good on them. They aren't going to last. So if you're driving to work, as Gabe mentioned, and you're practicing the whole way to work, you take it out of your mouth, slobbering wet with saliva, put it on the dash of your truck, go into work for 8 hours and come back out, that's probably the worst thing you can do with a diaphragm call. So if you just go through, if you aren't able to take it inside and rinse it off, put it in a call case where it's going to dry out, where it's going to be not exposed to the sun, and then take it inside with you, where it's going to be in a 70 to 75 degree controlled climate environment. So the 2 calls that I have, these were left on the dash of my truck, and they've been literally sitting there, latex up, on the dash of the truck for about 3 months. And you'll notice the latex is completely deteriorated. This one, it's actually ripped, it's curled, it looks like it's been burned almost, just the discoloration in it. This one didn't fare quite as bad, but you'll notice there's huge wrinkles here on the latex. It's not going to perform near as well. When I try to hit that high note, it's going to blow right through that because there's no stretch still on the diaphragm. Now to take another diaphragm, this one, when you look at it, it looks like it's been hammered. This is one that I used almost all elk season, and so it was in my pants pocket, it was in my bugle tube sleeve here, and again, this is a breathable material. So by taking a diaphragm and sticking it in here, it's not in sunlight, it's able to breathe and dry out, and it's going to be a really good solution to keeping the diaphragm good. But when you look at the latex on this one, the latex still looks like new. And this diaphragm has had several weeks of hard use in the elk woods. And you can tell from the discoloration of the tape, the dirt all over the tape, everything, that it's been used. But the latex, the part that makes the sound, is still good, and that's what you really want to preserve. So again, those 3 things you want to avoid are heat, direct exposure to sunlight, and moisture. And if you can take care of a diaphragm call and prevent those 3 things from happening, the diaphragm's going to last you a long time. You should be able to get several weeks, if not months, of steady practice with the call leading up to elk season, and honestly, you should be able to make it through an entire elk season with just 1 or 2 diaphragms if they're taken care of well and not abused. We know in reality when you're in elk woods, that's not always the case, so having a couple extras as a backup is important. But I just want to show the difference in the sounds in these calls. So this is the one that I've used a ton, but taken care of. Still has great sounds. The cow calls on it are just soft and sweet. The latex is broken in, it's super soft. I can probably still bugle really well with it. So you can see that it still holds that high note crystal clear, holds it solid, there's no fluttering or anything in it. Now when we compare it to this one that's been left on the dash, cow calls. It's basically got one tone, one pitch there. I can't vary it hardly at all. I can still manipulate it to work okay if I had to, but it's shot, it's hammered. And then to try to bugle, I can guarantee that high note is not going to hold with this one. There's nothing left. So take care of diaphragm calls, keep them out of heat, keep them out of direct exposure to sunlight, make sure they get dried off or have an opportunity to dry however you store them so that they don't retain that moisture and allow that moisture to start breaking the latex down. So probably the best way to store a diaphragm elk call is just in one of these call cases. You can just take your diaphragm, drop it in there. It's going to protect it from all the elements that are going to basically destroy the latex. And you can get these at the Elk 101 store. You can get them pretty much anywhere that elk calls are sold. So thanks for joining us, and Gabe, great question. Thanks so much for joining us in today's episode. And if you've got a question about elk hunting, email it over to us at info@elk101.com, and be sure to put Fire Away Q&A in the subject line. And we'll catch you in the next episode.